Chapter 33. Mai stayed after school on Fridays to participate in a program for at-risk teens. They didn't call them that, though. They called them special enrichment students, but of course she knew. Mai had read the pamphlet describing the funding for the project. It was on the desk of the team leader the day of the first meeting, so she wasn't really snooping or anything. She was curious what they thought she was at risk for. Once a week, a dozen chosen kids met at the school library to discuss everything from setting your sights on a college to the importance of getting your teeth cleaned. Today, a woman was talking about eating green vegetables and doing extracurricular activities to build a resume. When she finished, they were all given little tickets. At the end of the program, they could turn them in for prizes or something. The team leader wasn't clear on that. Maya loaded her backpack with new books from the school library and walked to the bus stop. Most of the kids who weren't at risk had their own cars to drive home or parents who picked them up. So maybe, Mai thought, the risk part involved riding the city bus. The bus shelter in front of the school had a flower bed with the toughest roses in Bakersfield. Or at least that's what Mai thought as she stared at the thorny bushes. One of the few things that Willow had said in the last month was that everything in life could be seen in a garden. According to her, if a plant was in decent soil and had sun and enough water, a bud would at some point show up. It would start small and very green. Sometimes bugs ate holes in the exterior of the bud, but if they didn't get too deep into the thing, it would bloom, and the world would see the flower. With time, the outer petals would start to wrinkle, beginning at the tips. The shape couldn't hold and the whole thing would open up big and then sloppy. The rose was now more affected by the wind or the rain or even the hot sun. The petals would finally just dry up and break away, falling to the ground. That left only a round bulb, which was the skull of the thing. And in time that would finally drop as well, returning to the soil. There was as much of a lesson in that, Willow had explained, as in anything she had been told by anyone about life or death or the stages in between. What was the rose before it was a rose? It was the soil and the sky and the rain and the sun. And where was the rose once it was gone? It returned, Mai figured, back to the larger whole that surrounds us all. No one ever picked Kwang Ha up from school, so when Del Duke's car screeched to a stop right at his feet, he was alarmed. The smudged window slid down and Del shouted, "Hey!" The boy could feel his whole body tense. You don't say "hey" to someone named Ha. And then Del shouted, "Get in, we're on a tight schedule." Kwang Ha didn't budge. "What's going on?" Del reached across and opened the car door. "Ask your mother. She's running this scam." Del didn't explain much, just that Patty and Willow were at his apartment fixing it up to make it look like they lived there. It all seemed pretty shady to Kwang Ha, but he called his mother on her cell and she told him to load up the cooking stuff from their garage. He was supposed to take blankets and sheets and bathroom things too. He was pretty sure it was the dumbest idea in the world, but he crossed the alley and took the sweaty counselor with him. For a month, Kwang Ha had been sleeping in the same room with a complete stranger. Maybe someone was finally going to do something about that. Del stood in the doorway of the garage and stared. No wonder they had used his address. This place didn't even look legal. Del had assumed they lived in a house or at least a real apartment, so this was a shocker. Where did the woman get all of her attitude? After he and the lone wolf, who might actually be an oddball, had placed a rice cooker, a bamboo steamer, a wok, half a dozen bowls, tongs, a collection of chopsticks, 2 meat cleavers, 3 cooking pots, and the bedding into Del's trunk, they filled an old milk crate with food. They then grabbed some stuff from the bathroom in the salon and were back on the road. It felt to Kwang Ha like some kind of prison break. By the time they swung into the dusty carport of the Gardens of Glenwood, he was even more on board with the whole plan. It seemed obvious that they were going around the law, or at least defying some rule or regulation, and that was exciting.